Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm the college essay guy, and I'm going to talk to you about the personal insight questions for the UCs. If you've never met me before, what should you know about me? I identify as I use he, him pronouns. I have lived in California and have been helping students on these essays for the last, I guess I started in 2003. So, like before you were born, 20 years. I started College Essay Guy like really in earnest like 10 years ago. Our website had about 3.5 million visitors last year, which was really cool to find out. And we're all about, what else should you know about me? I've written some stuff on this. Um, I'm all about ease, joy, and purpose. And I really am I'm really about the UCs because they're about access and equity. And I am too. And we are as an organization. So yeah, those are some things about me. Feel free to tell me about yourselves. Well, I'm going to learn about you in a few minutes because we're going to brainstorm. So let me give you the agenda. The promised bullet points were, I'm going to give you basically a sort of a free 1-hour guide. And I'm going to literally take you through it. We have this free 1-hour guide on our site, but I'm going to sort of point you to the pieces that I think are the most essential. I'm going to give you a UC workbook so you can create all of your content in there. We'll start with what are the UCs looking for. We're going to talk about what are the 13 specific things the UCs are looking for. We're going to talk about how can you actually find your personal insight question topics. My daughter's here with me tonight. And then I'm going to go over what I think to be your awesome personal insight questions and talk to you about what I believe are the 5 essential qualities of a PIQ. All this and more in about 48 minutes, I would estimate. So let me give you a link. It's here. I'm going to throw in the chat, this guide, so you can follow along if you like. Some of y'all thanks for sharing. Somebody's like, overworked. Sylvia's here. Hi, Sylvia. So here's what I'm sharing. Let me just share my screen. And I'm really grateful that Ashley is here late night moderating. Thanks, Ashley. Would you make my little tiny screen share box a little bigger, please? Thanks. So this is the UC guide. I just put the link in the chat. We'll follow up with it, of course, in the email. First things first, make sure that you check the requirements for the UCs. Are you eligible? There's a freshman version and there's a transfer version. You don't need to do this right now. I mean, maybe you want to do this right now, but I want to focus mostly on the writing parts. So this is our UC workbook. It's pretty darn thorough and it'll help walk you through. And if you're a teacher or a counselor on this, you can basically make a copy of this. Students too, obviously. Make a copy. That'll put a copy in your Google Drive. And then there's like a little walkthrough video I did of how to use this. This is from my course, just quick PSA. I'll email you about it, but I have a course on this that is pay what you can. So you can literally pay whatever. But this is sort of like the essential version of that course. But let's start with the basics. So what are the UCs even looking for? Well, they've got these 8 prompts. These are personal insight questions, they're called. And so your mission, your job, should you choose to accept it, is to pick 4 of these prompts and respond to each one of these in 350 words or less. So quick math tells us it's 350 words times 4. So it's 350. So it's 1,400 words or less. And you've got these different prompts. So one is, for example, on leadership. One is like asking you about your creative side. Another one's asking you about your greatest talent or skill. Now, are these mini essays? Kind of, but they don't like us to call the word essay. The UCs don't want us to use the word essays as counselors because, yes, they are short pieces of writing, but they really want you to think of these, and I want you to think of these as straightforward pieces of writing answers to these questions. Now, in 350 words, there's lots of ways that you could do that, and that's what we're going to get into in just a few minutes. But essentially, don't think of these as like, I don't know, like poems or like beautiful flowery things. I want y'all to be like straightforward as you answer these. So we're going to look at some examples in a little bit, and some of them are kind of poetic, but you really don't have to be. You can be straightforward in these. So again, leadership. They're asking you can talk about your creativity, greatest talent or skill. What's a significant educational opportunity that you've had? Or how have you overcome an educational barrier? I'll define some of these in just a little bit. What's a big challenge, the most significant challenge you faced? Maybe one that's affected your academic achievement. What's an academic subject that inspires you? How have you made your school or community a better place? And then just in general, what do you believe makes you a strong candidate? Now, these might seem like random questions, but they're connected to what the UCs really want to know. Let me separate this. The UCs have 13 elements. They're called the 13 elements of comprehensive review. You can find them on their website. And essentially what they're looking at your application holistically. And what that means is they're looking at the whole thing, and they're looking at a whole lot of stuff. So they're looking at, for example, your GPA. They're looking at which courses you've taken, how you compare to students, in your school. They're looking at what opportunities have been available to you, especially if you're in, California schools. They're looking for outstanding performance in one or more academic subject areas. Now, this starts to hint at, if they're asking for like, how have you been outstanding in one or more subject areas, what you'll start to see is these are actually connected to these questions here. So the purpose of these personal insight questions is to give the UCs information that's going to help you stand out in a good way when it comes to the 13 points of comprehensive review. So you'll see that some of these are kind of broad, like achievements in special projects. Well, that could mean a lot of different things. That could be something creative you've done. So maybe you created an app, or maybe you like to dance. Like that could be considered a special project. Some of these things, I say, like, participation in educational prep programs. It could be that over the summer, you had an opportunity to participate in a program that's going to prepare you for college. That might be a significant educational opportunity. So a question to ask yourself, and I'll probably say this like 2 or 3 more times on this session, is like, when you're trying to think of a topic, is the topic somehow going to help you essentially score points on these points of comprehensive review? Okay. Some of these things you can control, some not so much. Like geographic location, you can't really control that. It's just going to be like where you're applying from. But some of these things, like if there's a special project you've been involved with that you want to let them know about, something to talk about. And again, I'm going to get into more specifics when we brainstorm topics in just a minute. So let's move on. Actually, there's a cool questionnaire here that David Shaw put together from Warren. Shout out Warren High School, that has a whole bunch of information that you can put in. Counselors, teachers, feel free to use this. Keep colleges like logo on it, just to like give a shout out, or keep David Shaw here, most importantly, on it. But you can insert stuff like work experience and volunteer experience and special projects. This is a good brainstorming tool for you to begin thinking about what topics you could potentially use for these personal insight questions. For some of you, I'm recording this live like a few weeks before the deadline. You might not want to go into all this. This might be something that maybe counselors give out next year. But I think the best way, so let's get into like brainstorming some of your topics. I think one of the best ways to brainstorm your topics is scrolling down the activities list. So here, I'm going to jump back over to this. This is underneath the workbook here, is a quick guide to the UCs. And you'll see that here are the 13 points of comprehensive review. And then here are 2 ways to find your 4 topics. So I want you all to actually like go through this with me for a minute. So your UC application is going to be made up of a few different pieces. It's the 4 personal insight questions. Again, just to review, you're going to be choosing 4 of these 8 prompts, but they're also asking for an activities list, which is like a brag sheet. And I think a really good place to find potential topics for this is your activities list. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do here at the start of the process, if you haven't done it yet, is go ahead and create your UC activities list. Okay. Why do this? Number one, because I want you need to create it. So first of all, second, because I feel like there are going to be certain things that you're able to talk about in the activities list that you're like, oh, cool. I don't necessarily need to talk about that in my personal insight questions. So that's the second reason to do it. Then the third is like, there will be stuff that you put in there that you're like, oh, I feel like I didn't really express the full impact of how awesome that thing was. And so that might give you some ideas for what you can use as topics. So let me give you an example of what an educational prep program was. So here's a student, for example, who took a narrative writing workshop, and they describe it here. You get 340 characters or 350 characters, not words, characters, to describe, and that's about this long. Okay, so these descriptions are going to take you some time. So that's the other reason, the 4th reason I want you to write your activities list first, is going to take you a few drafts. But you'll see in this guide here some examples of different things that other students have done. Sometimes in the activities list, they'll ask you to describe the organization, program, school, or group. So you'll want to do that, and you'll get about 250 characters for that. But that's not describing what you did. That's what they really want to know. And you'll see some tips inside this guide where I really encourage you to use some strong verbs like brainstormed, analyzed, investigated, presented data. Okay. So as you're creating your activities list, hopefully your brain will start to turn on and you'll start to think, okay, here are some possible things that I could write about in these personal insight questions. So here are the categories. And I want you to just make either a mental list or actually just legit like start typing if you haven't already done this and start thinking about, okay, well, what are some of my biggest extracurricular activities or your volunteering or community service projects? Because what I would love for you to do in these next, like, let's say 4 to 5 minutes is I'd love for you to, in the chat, pitch me like 3 or 4 ideas for potential topics that you're considering. And here's the way that I'd love for you to do it. So open up one tab, and this one tab will be like, I want you to have the prompts like this so that you can kind of see them. And then in the other tab, I want you to have this list of basically possible activities. And here's what I'd love for you to do. Here's the format I'm going to ask of you. I want you to think about what activities could you potentially write about to hit on 4 of these different topics. So for example, let's say for leadership, I'll just do this right here. Like a leadership prompt could be like, I'm going to, for example, write about my participation in, what's a leadership thing I did in high school? The chess club. So 1, chess club. And then what's another one that I would do? Creative side, theater. So 2, theater. I'm doing, like, if I were applying to college today, I really like it when students do an academic subject one. So the academic subject one that I could probably do would be something around like English, like I would probably incorporate debate into that. So like English, debate, language. And then actually that's going to be prompt 6. And then prompt 7 is I'm going to do something on a community service project that I've been involved with. And a community service project was involved in a bunch. Let's say it was like Special Olympics volunteering. Okay, so here's what I want to ask of you is I want you to look at this list and I want you to just brainstorm right now, live on this session. What are 4 different topics that you could talk about that are going to show 4 different sides of you? So chess club can kind of show my nerdiness and also my ability to bring people together. Theater shows my creative side, my ability to adapt and whatever else I want to put in there. Then I can show like my love of language and writing. Ooh, actually I could do English and debate and like playwriting. So obviously the subject is going to be English, but I could obviously show different sides of myself. Ooh, maybe playwriting goes here. Theater and playwriting. Actually, I'm going to put playwriting here because it's more about writing. You see what I'm doing here? I'm kind of going, what are 4 different sides of myself? And also, how can I kind of like squeeze in and think of these as like, I like to think of these as like different buckets of your application. So buckets in the sense of like, oh, I'll put all my theater stuff in this one essay, and I'll put all my English stuff in this other essay. So take a moment, if you would, to just share with me in the chat, what are 4 different topics that you could potentially use based on activities that you participated in? And feel free to throw them into the chat. As you're doing this, let me just give you some more examples because I think it'll be helpful. I'm going to flash these up on the screen in just a second. Okay, here we go. Thanks for holding. Your call is important to us. Here we go. So here's some examples that other students have used, and this is the format that I'd love for you to include. Great, and use the format that Manav is using. So number 1, family responsibilities. Yes, that is an awesome way to show leadership. 3, communication skills. That's your superpower. Awesome. 5, overcoming anger issues. And then 6, data science. I'm like, Manav, 1, 3, and 6 sound awesome. 5, overcoming anger issues might be like a little bit of a yellow flag for the reader. I'm also, so maybe on 5. What about 7? I'm just be curious, could you somehow work in extracurricular or community service? That might be interesting. Let's see. Others. So we've got, Maria's got Theater, dance, production assistant, and independent study. Cool. Those seem like this. Now, one question, of course, I go like, how could you use theater to show one side of you and dance to show another side? Or could it be that those two could be combined? And then one of the things I'm noticing is like, there's not like, as far as I can tell, although maybe you can, like the community service angle. So maybe theater and dance could be combined. And then production assistant is a different one, independent study, and then like you could show community service, because I'd love for you to bring in some like, different, make sure you got some variety in here. Here's some nice variety from Tim: Taekwondo, musicals and choir, work, and then teaching Japanese. Awesome. I feel like I'm getting 4 different sides of you there. Totally. Let's see. Gavin's got volunteer camp counselor / chess club. Both of those seem like they could be leadership. Chess club president. Awesome. And then you've got cooking, creative side, taking notes / notebook. I'm not sure what that one is necessarily. I wonder if the same question that I have for you. I mean, I don't know enough because I don't know you and I don't know what that's going to be about. I'm not as clear on how the significant educational opportunity is like taking notes. So maybe question mark, but science, chemistry, and physics. And if you're thinking about, going into the STEM fields, I think writing about science is great. Lindsay notes photography for creativity. Awesome. Hearing loss, talking about a significant educational opportunity or educational challenge that you faced, could go there. Build on club and trip for 7. Cool. So you need one more. One thing I will say, Lindsay, is like you could write about hearing loss if you wanted to in that section. That is the like the PIQ. The other thing you can do, so there's one more place. I'm just going to Google this. Additional information, college essay guy. There's also the additional comments UC. So there's an additional section on the UC application where you can put other stuff that you didn't necessarily want to put in your personal insight questions. So there are 2 sections. One is the additional comments, where you can put in anything about the academic history that you want. And then they've got 2 of these. They've got basically one that's 550 characters, and then they've got one that's 550 words. And if you wanted to, just a thought for you, Lindsay, and anybody else who has something that they feel like is like sort of additional information, you could put that in like a basically bullet points in your additional comments, and then you could use that space to write about something else that connects to the 14 points of comprehensive review. So I just wanted to throw that possibility your way. And in terms of like, what kind of stuff could I put in the additional comments section, which is, I think, an often underutilized section of the application. Right here. I'll just put it in the chat. Okay. I don't have time to look at everybody's right now, but y'all are on the right track. I'm feeling cautiously optimistic, we'll say. So let's jump into the next section. So this is totally exactly what you should be doing, is coming up with ideas. I want to share with you a couple different structures that you can use when it actually comes to writing your personal insight questions. So the first structure is if you're writing about challenges, and most students will not be writing about challenges, but if you're writing about the UC5, for example, then a simple structure that you can use essentially goes like this. It's, what was the challenge that you faced? What did you do about it? And what did you learn? And again, this is in the free guide, but you'll see an example here of a student who faced some significant challenges that he talks about here in the opening of his essay. He talks about domestic abuse in his family, and he talks about alcoholism. And he doesn't get into all the details. He just like names them here, and he names the impact that it had on him and his family. Then there's a turning point midway through where he talks about being determined to improve the quality of life for his family and himself. And this, to me, is the really, really, really important part of the essay, is that he talks about what he did about it. And notice, as I highlight in this middle paragraphs right here, he uses active verbs. So like, he became his own teacher, learned how to fix bikes, found a job, became independent. So there's lots of stuff that shows us that he didn't just like hang back, right? He actually did stuff about it. And then what did he learn? He says he's excited to say that there's so much he has yet to do. So we learned that he has this craving for adventure. He says, I haven't danced the tango, solved a Rubik's Cube, or seen the World Trade Center. And I have yet to see how Fernando will grow. Fernando was his brother, who we mentioned earlier. I'll do as much as I can from now on, not because I have to, because I choose to. So he's showing a really strong value here, a value of like autonomy. And again, the simple structure here is, what were the challenges you faced? Describe them briefly, straightforward. Don't dwell on them too much in the essay and in life. And then what did you do about it? And then what did you learn? Now, again, this is going to be most useful probably for students who are writing the UC5. But I want to offer you and spend a little more time on a different kind of structure, which I call montage structure. which is going to allow you to essentially talk about lots of different sides of yourself. And this is applicable to probably most of the UCs. So this is a student who's writing about a musical instrument that he played. And here's what he says. He says, I've devoted thousands of hours of my life to playing the santur, a classical Persian instrument that originated in the Middle East. Now, you might be reading this and be like, come on, Ethan, I have not played the santur. But you can actually switch out another instrument and be like, I've devoted a bunch of time to playing the piano or the guitar or the flute. He says, some people think I'm strange, a Persian, redheaded Jewish teenager obsessed with an ancient musical instrument, but they don't see what I see. My santur is King David's lyre. It can soothe, enrapture, mesmerize. Now, this is an essay that was written a long time ago, and I wouldn't actually recommend that students be so poetic. I think you can actually be much more straightforward with this. But here's what's most important about this draft, and the reason I like this essay, is that the things that he's showing about himself, the values that he's expressing, are values that you might not expect when it comes to someone talking about an instrument. Because usually when we talk about instruments, it's like discipline, hard work, and perseverance, right? But check out what this student does. So he says, the santur also allows me to connect to my culture and Persian heritage. Okay, cool. Tell me more. And to visit Iran of the past, a culture rich in artistic tradition. Sometimes I imagine performing for the king in the hanging gardens of Babylon. The santur sounds echoing to the seven hills of Jerusalem. Again, a little poetic for the UCs. Like, you don't need to be so poetic, but I think this is a nice example of connecting it to a value that's important to him. So far, the santur connects to culture. Today, some Americans view Iran as a land of terrorists, but when I play, the innocent of Iran, the educated, the artists, the innovators come to life. Iran is not a country of savages. It's Kubla Khan's fountain, an abundant source of knowledge and creativity. So this is interesting. Now music is representing an opportunity for social change, for changing the way that people think about maybe a certain group of people. Finally, the santur represents one of my remaining links to my grandfather. In the last few years of his life, Baba June did not know me as his grandson. Alzheimer's slowly took over his brain, and eventually he could not recognize me as his grandson. So essentially, his grandfather was sick, but he says he grew up with the music of the santur. So when I play, the music connects. Oh, and his father plays in his car every day. So when I play, the music connects all three generations. There's an ending here where he basically says he's interested in creating a CD and donating the proceeds. But then at the end, I love this ending. He says, sometimes I wonder if the santur will soon become extinct, like the 7,000 endangered languages, which may soon be gone. And he says, not if I have anything to say about it. So again, this one is pretty poetic for the UCs. And it's actually so poetic that what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch this example out so that by the time you look at if you look at this again in like a day or two, like on this UC free guide, you'll see another example that's a little bit more straightforward. But I wanted to share this one with you before I switch it out so you'd have multiple examples and talk about a few things that I think you can learn from this. So the first thing you're looking for is a focusing lens, which is basically like a topic. And in this case, the topic is obviously the santur. And when it comes to like choosing your, topics, it could be, for example, Savannah's like Latino Connection Club. That would be your topic. That's your focusing lens. Okay. Then what I'm going to ask you to do when it comes to brainstorming these is I want you to brainstorm values that connect to this thing by using this values exercise. And the values exercise is just a list of a bunch of values, really a bunch of ideas. And so in this case, with this student, if he were doing this, he would be like, santur, what does it connect to? And he brainstorms a bunch of stuff that it potentially connects to, because that's going to tell you what you could basically put in your paragraphs. But I want to encourage you to make what I call uncommon connections. So rather than basically choosing a common topic, for example, like basketball, making common connections, hard work, perseverance, and teamwork, and then using common language, in other words, like basketball has really influenced my life, I want to encourage you to consider trying to stand out in one of these three categories. So either the topic or the connections or the language. Now, for the UCs, I don't think the language is necessarily the way you want to go. I think you want to try and stand out with either the topic or the connections. Now, most of you on this call right now are not going to have uncommon topics. You're going to be writing about something that's like, let's see. I'm just going to try to grab one here. Oh, you all have got some uncommon topics. Like creating a data science simulation, that's an uncommon topic. Okay, speech and debate is a great one. If you've got a common topic like speech and debate, then I think it's all the more important to make uncommon connections. In other words, for you to stand out on these PIQs, saying things that people wouldn't necessarily expect or see in a speech and debate essay is going to be the key. So here's how you do this. Really simple brainstorm. Counselors, teachers, you can teach this to students in like 5 minutes. And the way you do this is you basically brainstorm what is going to be like the cliche version of your personal insight question. So if it's a debate essay, what are people probably going to focus on? They're going to focus on like communication and how I learned to become a better communicator, or I found my voice, or I used to be shy and now I'm not. So brainstorm these and like kind of imagine what is somebody else going to say? And then just go, okay, what could I say about my relationship to speech and debate that might be values that are not going to be in someone else's speech and debate personal insight question? And this might take you 5 minutes. It might take you 20 minutes, but it's worth the time. So let me do this with you here live. So if I was writing about speech and debate, I might write about, and you can play along with me if you want, what are some uncommon values connected to speech and debate? Just write UV, uncommon value, and then put it to be in the chat. So an uncommon value related to speech and debate for me might be creativity. Social change might be kind of obvious. Stability. Ooh, community. Not everybody's gonna be talking about community when it comes to speech and debate, but it gave me a community when I needed it. Also adventure. I don't know if you'd always think about speech and debate, but when I was in debate, when I was in 11th grade and I got to travel out of the city with my speech and debate team, it was super adventurous. It also taught me how to like speak to authority to speak truth to power. So there's like, I don't know, like what that value is, like empowerment. Seeking truth. Nice, Patricia. I love that. Hunger, says Lauren. Awesome. So my point here is this. I would rather read a speech and debate essay that's on the value of, let me like share with you my face. Hi. Like you could write a speech and debate essay that's about like discipline, hard work, and perseverance, or like finding your voice. And it's not going to be bad necessarily, but if you can spend literally like 5 to 10 minutes and go, okay, what are some values that I've developed through speech and debate that might, stand out? Like how has speech and debate taught you about self-control, or about hunger, or about, let's see, what else? Efficiency. That's an interesting one. Or serenity. Yes, lovely. This is suddenly a much more interesting potential personal insight question. IMHO, in my humble opinion. I mean, it's uncommon. Like, how do you stand out? Come up with uncommon values, uncommon things to say, and here's your menu for it. So it's a pretty simple exercise. And again, to anybody who's like, well, I don't have an uncommon topic, you don't need one. But what I would say is, like, the more common your topic is, the more uncommon your connections are going to need to be to stand out. Yeah. So again, just to recap, brainstorm the cliche version of your topic. What are the values that everybody else is going to put in? And then look at the values exercise, which linked here again, and go, okay, what are some uncommon connections? And each of those values is basically going to make up the paragraph. Okay. Just give a specific example of how that value is, or how that like value is manifested in your life. So for example, someone said, speech and debate connects to, some of these I don't know, like efficiency. Like, okay, you just need to give us a specific example of how speech and debate has taught you efficiency, right? Okay. I mean, if you have questions about this, throw them into the chat if you like. Uncommon value of onomatopoeia. Love it, Melanie. Ooh, the ability to speak up even when others might not agree. Now, what's that value? That's nice. Yeah, being less afraid of confrontation. Somebody's saying something like really similar there. Lovely. Okay. So, the other thing I said I'd talk about is I want to make sure that I share. Okay. So what are the qualities? So what are the qualities that ultimately what you're looking for? And let's say you've already written drafts and you're like, Ethan, let's get to the things. I wrote these drafts like whatever, weeks ago or months ago. Here are the 5 things that I like to see in a great response to a personal insight question. So first of all is information. And if you've written a draft, I want you to go through and ask yourself, number 1, is there ask these 5 questions. Do I have information that adds to my application? And Does that information connect back to one of the UC 13 points of comprehensive review? Okay, and again, you can Google these 13 points of comprehensive review. 2, is my topic clear, hopefully at or near the start? So just to give you an example, let me show you another example PIQ. This is the tool that's inside the course. Again, that's pay what you can, so you can literally pay whatever you want. Drumming. Let's see. So this student's writing about drumming. He says, sometime during middle school, I began my journey to establish a rock band, become its drummer, and most importantly, grow magnificent long hair. So he's named drumming in the first sentence here. Let me grab another one randomly. This is the academic subject prompt. Through books like Man's Search for Meaning and documentaries like Enemies of the People, history has taught me that human empathy knows no borders. So history is the topic here, and it's mentioned early on. So again, just to recap, what we're looking for, sorry, I know I'm jumping around, but these are the 5 things that we're looking for. Number 1, does the information provided connect the 13 points of comprehensive review? Is the topic clear, hopefully at or near the start? And is the purpose of each paragraph clear? Like, are you working from some strong topic sentences so that if you just read the first sentence of each paragraph, they kind of flow together? 3rd, action. Do you use active verbs to describe specifically what you've done, whether to explore the activity you're describing or to overcome a particular challenge? So let me give you an example of that. So in this leadership essay, for example, this is a student who worked in his parents' restaurant in Mexico. And he says, as he developed in his role, he became a keystone piece for the waiters, taught them about this, acquired organizational habits, dialogued more fluently. Notice these active verbs, I highlighted them in bold just so you can see them right there. Okay, so that's the 3rd thing or the 4th thing? It's the 3rd thing. Okay, so 3rd, action. Do we use active verbs? Do we really see the stuff you've done? How is it manifested? Whatever this thing is, how is it manifested in the world? Sometimes students get really abstract. Like you'll see a PIQ, personal insight question, that a student is writing about a superpower, like, or a skill that they have, like being creative. And there's like all these sort of like wandery words, and it's like creativity is important, and it's like a musing on creativity itself. No, I want to know like actually what you've done, how you've physically been creative in the world. So think of like, what is the movie version of your creativity? Like, how does that manifest itself? That's why I like going to the activities list. I'm not saying you 100% have to use activities for all of your PIQs, but I just think it's a really good way of manifesting the next thing, your values. Do we understand your core values? In fact, can we highlight and name your values based on the specific details and examples you provided? So the example that I gave earlier was from like a creative one. So for example, this student who wrote about drumming, what are his values? First of all, this grow magnificent long hair. We know he's funny, so there's a sense of humor. I enrolled at a local music institute for drum classes twice a week, so we know he's like ambitious. I didn't have a drum kit at home, so I'd eagerly wait for those 2 one-hour sessions of smashing cymbals and double kicking basses every week. I was having a great time, but some part of me always felt I wasn't exploring my musical creativity as much as I could. So as I continued to develop the mastery of the drum kit, percussion became a part of my everyday life. And soon I could sense rhythmic patterns in ordinary sounds. So this is like the value of music and also like creativity and like starting to see creativity elsewhere. When no drums were available, I'd start finger tapping. Anyway, we're starting to see some of his rhythmic intelligence. Okay, cool. And then he decides to like level up, and he decides to like build a percussion instrument on his own. So we start to get like his nerdy side and tech side. So we start to see that value come through. So we see his creativity, we see his love of music, we see his ambition, and we also see his like, I don't know, love of tech. I'm not sure what that like value is, but it's like maybe ingenuity or, you know, inventionness. You know, his ability to innovate, inventionness. I've never said that on a session before. I don't even know what that means. Anyway. Okay, so essentially we're looking for values. How do we know like what you care about? Can we point specifically? And again, you can use this values list if you've written drafts to go through and be like, do I see things like practicality and creativity and, you know, responsibility within the PIQ? Finally, insight. Do you answer "so what" several times in your PIQ? Like, do we get a sense of why these details matter to you or who they matter to? Let's say you did a really cool community service project and you don't really tell us like what the outcome of the project was or who it impacted. Like, we want to know who it impacted. And if you've written your activities list already, let me share my face for a second because I'm making a really important point. If you've written your activities list already, then you're going to kind of know what's coming through in your brag sheet. And then I feel like what's great about that is that you can basically spend the rest of your personal insight questions talking about stuff that's not already in the activities list. So let's say, for example, you put speech and debate in your activities list and you're like, yes, I was vice president of speech and debate. And here's the stuff we did. And here's how we adapted during the pandemic. Great. Then if you've got all those details in your activities list, then give us some other aspects of your involvement in debate for the personal insight questions. Okay. I think questions are coming through. So let me check and see. Ooh, active verbs. Somebody's asking about active verbs. Let me give you a list of them. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate you asking that. Here's a list of active verbs. Let me give you some examples of those. Yeah. Yes, of course, Ethan has an epic list of activities list verbs. This is called my epic list of activities list verbs, but I think it actually works really well for the UCs. So like when you're trying to brainstorm because you're like, I don't know what I did. If it's like a leadership thing, well, did you coordinate people or establish anything or improve any systems? Did you increase people's involvement, recruit new members? Did you oversee anything? Like these verbs will help you actually remember what you did. Communication skills. We talked. Oh, great. Did you collaborate? Did you discuss? Did you debate? Did you moderate, negotiate? You get what I'm saying? So anyway, this list will help you show the stuff that you've done. So just a quick recap. What are the UCs looking for? This is, again, your crash course. I did it in like half an hour. Number one, UCs are looking for these 13 points of comprehensive review. These are the 13 things you're looking for. Your 4 UC personal insight questions are going to connect back to those. You've got 8 prompts, and you're going to choose 4 of them, 350 words each. And you're going to try and make sure that each of those is showing some different side of you. We're going to segue to Q&A in just a minute, and I'm going to take questions about, should I write about this topic or this one? And I'm so happy to answer any questions you've got. But once you've got your topics picked out, then you're going to ask yourself, okay, is this a challenge? If so, challenge what I did, what I learned, simple structure. If not, you can ask yourself, okay, montage, what is my topic? What different values can I connect it to that aren't necessarily what everybody else would write about for that particular topic? So if it's, again, violin, probably not disciplined, hardworking, perseverance, no matter what. Those just seem to be like really common values. So what are some other values that you could focus on? And then 1 value per paragraph. Okay. And then once you've done all that, go back and ask yourself these 5 questions. Number 1, is there information that adds to my application that connects back to the 13 points of comprehensive review? Number 2, clarity. Is my topic clear? And is the purpose of each of my paragraphs clear? Number 3, let's see if I can remember them all. Action. Do I see stuff that you actually did? Number 4, insights. Oh, insights is 5. Oh, I had 4 out of 5. Values. Yes, the one ring to rule them all. Number 4, let me just flash it up on my screen so you have it again. These are the 5 things. Write these down if you like. These are the 5 things to look for. It's hard to remember them all, even for me. And that should get you started. I mean, that should also get you finished. This gives you a thing to look at as you're kind of creating these. And again, the best place I think that you can start is on your UC activities list. Like if you haven't created that right now, I would say dive into that. I don't want to say tonight because it might be late where you are. It might be midnight if you're in Brazil, but 12:41. But I would say like tomorrow, start on your activities list, start creating that, because again, it's either going to give you ideas or it's going to tell you what not to put in there. Okay, let's do questions. That's what I got. I like it when we can just get the content in like 35 minutes, and let's do questions. And I'm happy to answer, questions on topics or prompts or whatever else you need. Yeah, I love what you said, Alex. The thrill of having a good argument with somebody. That's awesome. Diane asks, would it be advisable to write an essay about a difficult teacher and a creative approach to problem solving in order to develop rapport and a positive experience in the class? Yeah, that could work. I could see that. Yes, like an educational barrier, significant educational opportunity. I could see that going for 4. Yeah. Jessica asks, can you refer to specific programs in one university, like a club at Berkeley, if you're applying to all the UCs? I wouldn't recommend it. Because then the other UCs are going to be like, wait a minute, what about us? I wouldn't do it. If I plan to write about creating an app in prompt 2, should I go with my passion for computer science in prompt 6? Maybe. If you're a STEM, if you're like a student who's really interested in computer science, engineering, I would say make sure, Aria, that only 2 of your PIQs are. Sometimes students do all 4 on computer science. And I would say like 3 is really pushing it. Try and do like only 2, because those seem like kind of connected. So if just 2 and 6, and if you could do 2 other topics for the other 2, I think that's okay. What do you do if you feel like you're repeating the same topics? Find other things to write about, Adriana, because there's so many things you've been involved with. And if you haven't done your activities list, go back and do that, because chances are, because here's what I'd say. Even like, rather than do like debate in one essay and then like debate, but like in a different way later, like I would rather see like a crappy photography essay and let you score some points, as it were, in photography, even if it's not like, again, like the best photography essay ever, if you haven't spent a ton of time doing it. Because otherwise it's like, I do debate, check the box. And then I also do debate, but like in this other way, you're kind of just checking the same box. Unless you're like doing it for the UC7, which is community service, and you're like, no, I teach students how to think critically. Yes, it happens to be through debate, but you kind of want to like downplay the fact that it is the same, it's a version of the same thing, and focus on the values, for example, like helping others or critical thinking or social justice, that aren't focused on the other essay. So if you are going to use the same topic twice, make sure you're focusing on really different values. But Adriana, you've got other stuff I'm sure that you can write about. Let's see. Are clubs vital for out-of-state applicants? It's really hard for out-of-state applicants, just kind of in general. I would say clubs are important, Tiffany. So like do your best, and then make sure that you're applying to a wide range of schools. Just because, and I say this to you, any student who's outside of the UC of California, it's going to be hard to get into the UCs, and there's probably not going to be lots of financial aid, just in my general experience. So I just want to advise you all. And by the way, you've got a year, so you've got some time to expand your list. Okay. I want you to think broadly about other schools. If you're an international student, we've got a whole international students hub that Ashley will link to in just a moment. And if you're like trying to just develop your college list, Ashley, would you mind just linking them to the how to build your college list link, resources? Because there's a lot there. But I want to encourage you, Tiffany, and anybody else who's from out of state of UCs, to make sure you've got awesome schools that you can definitely get into. But to answer your question, yes, clubs are important. Do what you can, but it's not going to be, in many cases, the clubs are not make or break. And I say that because they're looking at your application holistically. So it's not like if you do this club, you're going to get into the UCs. It's sort of like, what they're looking for is like, they're looking for your grades. They're also, the other thing they're looking for is like to differentiate you from other students in your school. So if these things will connect to the 13 points of comprehensive review, these clubs that you're interested in pursuing, and they'll differentiate you from other students in a good way in your school, then, and you really care about it, then yeah, go for it. Someone asked, can you explain good examples of what might be good to use the additional comment section for? So the reason I didn't go into that is just because I have this whole long blog post on that, and I put it in there. Actually, would you mind just, I've got it actually. So I'm not going to go over it in depth. I'm just going to like send you this link. I think it's going to answer your questions. Okay. Can you mention specific UCs in PIQ 8? A few people have asked that, and I wouldn't do it. I would say keep it broad for the UCs. For the community project, is it okay to use helping soldiers during the war in your country, or is it too political? I think it's okay. Yes, it's fine. What should you do if you feel like you can't make your topic interesting enough? Do the values exercise that I mentioned. Do the four UCs need to show different values or a common theme? This is a great question. I get this one a lot. You don't need a common theme. Don't try to impose it. I think different values is actually better because it'll bring more variety. So, I mean, some students are applying for STEM or like engineering, and they want to really demonstrate that they're going to be able to crush it. Like that's a common theme, and that's okay. So it's not bad to have a common theme, but don't feel like you have to force yourself into like a box. I have ASD autism. Thoughts on including this in the essays? Also, I don't have a 4.0 GPA. You can include that. Yeah, but make sure it's relevant. And if you're like struggling to squeeze it in, then just put it in the additional comments section. But if you put it in the additional comments section, I would advise you to use that structure of like, what was the challenge? What did you do about it? What did you learn? In particular with the challenge, like how has that impacted you? Like what have the effects been? So challenge, effects, what I did, what I learned. Any student who's got, some kind of learning difference or, other things that can go in there are things like mental health issues or parents' unemployment, or like a class you dropped or, had to drop, like all kinds of these things that you feel like you need to explain. You don't feel like you have to use a whole person one side question to do it. You can just put in the bullet points, challenge, effect, what I did, what I learned, and the UCs will thank you for it. Regarding my love for mythology, my teacher created a teaching assistant position with me in mind. Congrats. I don't know what the question is, but congrats. For the creative UC essay, do I need to solve a solution in my PIQ? No, not necessarily. It could just be like, I express my creativity through dance. And like, you didn't need to like necessarily solve a problem with dance. It could just be like, how much you heart to dance. What can I write about if I haven't taken any honors or AP classes, was only in a club for a little over a semester, and have only volunteered as a TA for a semester? I would say, Sophia, pick whatever subject is the most awesome for you that you feel like you can crush it in. I would go academic subject for that one. No clubs. Interesting. Good question. Volunteered as a TA for a semester. I mean, that's volunteering. So I would try it, turn that into a UC7. So we've got 2 there, an academic subject, something that you feel like you've spent some time thinking about and that you enjoy. So 6 and 7. Oh, this is a tough one. Do you do anything creative? And it doesn't have to be like official, like an activity. It could be something that you like to do in your spare time. That could be potentially for UC 2. And then, oh gosh, I don't know much about you. You'll have to let me know more about yourself, about you, Sophia. Let me give you a list of, sometimes students get stuck and they're like, oh, those activities don't count. So let me give you like a list of activities that count that you maybe didn't think counted. So this is a list of actual activities that students actually submit on their college application. Let me just flash this up on the screen for a second. One of the things that students, I think, don't know that counts is like family responsibilities. Some of you had big family responsibilities that shifted based on the pandemic. So, taking care of your younger siblings, that can count. Being involved in a, religious group, church, temple, mosque, songs, not listening to songs, so like writing songs, cleaning jobs definitely count. If you've worked at all, that could count, whether it was virtual or whether it was in person. Anyway, I don't know to read all these, but essentially, I put this link in the chat. Lots of random things that you wouldn't think necessarily count might count. Some of these are pretty random, but hopefully that gets your brain going a little bit. What else? Let's see. Scrolling up. Are there certain subjects that, even though they build personality and represent adversity, can be too personal or triggering in the eyes of colleges? I think the thing that makes it triggering, Jack, is often like the specific details. So if you write something and you share it with somebody and they're kind of triggered by it, that's probably a sign that it might be triggering for a reader. But oftentimes, the question you got to ask yourself is like, well, what is the reader trying to do? They're trying to figure out what are the skills, qualities, values that the student's going to bring to a college campus. And there's more specific versions of that with the 13 points of comprehensive review. But you got to ask yourself, like, why am I sharing this detail about myself? Probably it's to set up an impact that it had on my life and what I did about it, what I learned. So as long as that's only in like, it's 350 words, as long as the challenge is only in the first 100, 125 words, it's going to probably be super straightforward. You're not going to have time for a lot of details. It's just going to be like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Oftentimes that triggering thing will be like just the way that it's phrased in like a particular sentence. So just rewrite that sentence. I've seen students write about things in like really specific graphic ways. And then they just like dialed it back. And it was like, oh, okay. So you're still like factually explaining the thing that happened. But then most of the essay is not about that. It's about what you did and what you learned. Think of it as like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay. Challenges and effects, 1/3. What I did, 1/3. What I learned, 1/3. I had dyslexia, but I overcame it. Is that a good additional comments thing? Totally. Yes. I helped pass a law in my local community. What if my essay reader opposes that law? Good question. I mean, your reader, for whatever, let me just say, like, the demographics of California are, chances are and I'm not making any value judgment, chances are your reader will be liberal. So the odds are, I would say, for you, William, if the law is something that someone who votes Democratic, then odds are pretty good that your reader will agree with you. There is a small chance that if it's that the reader will be conservative, but I would say it's pretty small among UC readers, in my experience. So I know that sounds weird, like, well, it depends on the politics, but maybe it depends on the politics. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is, like, back to this question. What are the 13? How does it connect to the 13 points of comprehensive review? If you're giving them information that shows them how, for example, insert one of those, and you show like active things that you've done, and you reveal your values and the things that you care about, because those values, and I say this about religion and politics and all these sort of stigmatized things, values we can all get down with. So let me give you an example. Let me use religion as an example. So let's say, for example, a student wants to write about an experience they had in their church. They want to, like, I volunteered at church. Are people going to be like, what if they don't share my religion? Well, what are you saying in the thing? Are you saying, like, I grew up Presbyterian. So if I wrote my essay and it was like, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and you should believe in him or else you're going to hell, like, probably not what I want to say in my essay, right? So instead, I might talk about, if I was writing about my church involvement and thinking about the church involvement that I had, it's like, values are, communication. Because one of the things that I learned really well is how to talk to other people about their religious beliefs. What else did I learn? I got a lot of opportunities to think about social justice and helping others in the church. So these values are values that, even though it's like, yeah, you reader may not be Presbyterian, yeah, like, communication's cool and like helping other people is cool. So my suggestion would be, with a stigmatized topic, ask yourself, what are the values that I can show? And then they can, like, really see what you're about. Should we talk about COVID and distance learning? If you want to, but chances are a lot of people have been through it. So what I would just ask is, like, is there something particular in the way that you experienced it that feels somewhat uncommon? If so, again, challenges, what I did, what I learned, put in additional comments. For love of an academic subject essay, I wanted to ask, does it have to be in a classroom or outside? Because I want to write about political science, and I got into it during the 2020 learning about the troubles. It can be both. Like, they ask you in the prompt, inside or, and does it say inside and or outside? Let me look. It says, describe how you further this interest inside and or outside the classroom. So either can work. Probably you've done it both, Alex. I'm guessing that it's hard just hearing that you've been interested in this, it's hard to imagine that you haven't had at least a little bit of experience inside and outside the classroom. What else? Let's see. What if you get a stipend for your community service? Can you still write about it in the 7th essay? Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can just mention that. Just put it in your activities list, because that's I don't know, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I think you're fine. I'm using fashion design, wearable art, for prompt 2. And what is let's see, it just moved down. Oh, I lost the question. I'm sorry. Sorry, fashion design person. I lost your prompt. I lost your question. You'll have to repost it. As a challenge, is it a good idea to talk about relocating to a new high school that didn't have a lot of diversity? Again, 2 questions. How does it connect to the 13 points of comprehensive review? And how does it show them what are the skills, qualities, values you're going to bring? So if that was a challenge, what were the effects? What did you do about it? And what did you learn? And if you don't have a ton of stuff that you did about it or what you learned, I would maybe write on another topic. Would you recommend researching each school's freshman profile to see what traits they're looking for in their student body and then catering your essays toward those traits? Not necessarily. No. I've only recently created a YouTube channel. Awesome. Very few subscribers, views. I was planning to use that channel as the focus for creativity prompt. That's okay. Do I advise making my channel a main prompt, even though I started so late and it's not something I've had a lot of accomplishments with yet? I'm a senior. That's okay. I mean, it also depends, Misty, on what else you're writing about. So I don't know. I would say write on your top 4 activities. And by top, it's like most, the things you'll have the most to say about that are going to allow you to show different sides. Like, so most content, most variety, different sides of you, most impressive. Like, sometimes students don't write about things because they're like, oh, that's in my activities list. I don't know. If there's something that's like super impressive, then you might consider writing about it. So don't leave money on the table. That sounds really cool, Misty. I can't say because I don't know you, but it sounds pretty cool. Oh, here we go. I'm using fashion design for prompt 2. And what's a cliche way of using this topic? Currently, I'm going with cultural preservation and expressing my creativity through wearable art and clothing, combining crochet and sewing. That all sounds awesome. So, I mean, cultural preservation sounds uncommon. So if you're focusing on that, I think you're good. Should you write about your unique experience with COVID in the additional comment section or in PIQ5? Gavin, I would say additional comment section, because then you've got an extra PIQ to play with. You know what I mean? Like, you've got an extra canvas. So if you like think of these as like 4 canvases, and then you've got a 5th canvas that's the additional comments, and then you've got a 6th canvas that's the activities list. If you can put stuff in that additional comments section, then you've got another room, another spot that's like opened up for something else. Should you not write a PIQ about something on your activities list? What if it shows a new perspective about it? Do it. That's where I don't know if you caught the earlier stuff, Lindsay, but I think it's a good idea to consider using your activities list to generate ideas for your PIQs. Let's see. Does juggling both objects and a busy schedule work for question 3? Yeah, that's awesome, Carter. That's such a great idea. I love it. If I had a connection with UCLA while in high school, went to Math Olympic Circle, but now I apply as a transfer, should I still write about it? Yeah, that's fine. Do you have the 13 UC checklist? Could you post it again? Thanks. Just Google it. UC 13 points of comprehensive review. It's also in the guide that we shared. Ashley, would you mind sharing the free guide again, please? Oh yeah, she did it. Never mind. Can I use something I did a while ago, playing instruments, but I continue every now and then? Yes. We're almost at time. How long can the additional comments be? As short as possible. Straightforward, factual is good. Would becoming a coin collector because of my love of history be a good topic? Yes, Oscar, I love that. It's beautiful. Is it a bad idea to reuse and condense your Common App essay? I find it's really hard to do that. It depends on the topic, though. What's the topic, David? I guess let me know what your topic is, and then I can tell you. Could video editing go under creative? Yes. Are the PIQs or the activities list more important? Neither is more important. It's all important. They read it all. Okay. We're almost at time. Let's see. I'm into the chat. Back into the chat. For some reason, my chat like went away. I don't know why. Oh well. Let's do 2 more questions. How do you evaluate what goes into the additional comments and not in not on another canvas? So I would say don't worry about too much where it goes. Like, look first of all at the list of things. There are like 10 or 12 things that I list on that blog post. If it's one of those things, I think you can put it in the additional comments. But mostly, I think obsessing over, and I don't think you're obsessing, but like, don't worry too much about where it goes. It's like, get it into the application somewhere. All the stuff that you feel like is important, put it in there somewhere. Activities list, personal insight questions, or additional comments. I just want to encourage you to make use of the additional comment section because I think some students just don't, or they leave it blank. Let's see. Let's do like one more. I know we're at time. Is it 2 gentlemen? I'm trying to find one that's like could focus on many more people. For the academic interest question, does the interest have to be literal, or can it be a way that your thinking has changed? Good question. I think for the academic interest one, my personal preference is like, give me the subject. Like, what is the actual thing? I'd love to hear about how your thinking has changed, but through this particular subject, what is the stuff that you read, studied in the classroom? How did you explore it out of the classroom? And then, oh, by the way, an insight that you would include would be like, and it changed my thinking in this particular way. Okay. That's what I got. Thoughts? Final things? Grateful for the advice. You're welcome. Sure, you got it. Awesome. Thanks for saying that. Oh, what lovely affirmations here in the chat. The chat came back. So where are you right now? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just looking at the check-in question. I hope that you're feeling a little more prepared. Grace is saying, should we include standardized test scores and additional comments? No, the UCs are test blind. So what's more important is they want to know your grades. They want to know your activities. They want to know what you think in these questions. They're not looking at grades. So yeah, you're welcome. We'll follow up with all the resources. Again, there's that. If you want to dig deeper, we've got that course that's got all that whole tool that's got all the specific examples. Let me show it to you again real quick. I didn't really show it to you, but we have this tool that has all the things you're looking for. I'll just show it to you real quick. We'll follow up with it in the email. Here it is. Here's the tool. Some of you are asking about that in the chat. So this is what's in, and again, it's like I said, it's pay what you can. So no financial barrier to joining. Anyway, here's the tool. This is the one that I showed you earlier. A cool part of this, if you do end up getting this section here, section 2, is like, it walks you through every single prompt. So like for the leadership one, it's like, here's an example essay, and then here's what's awesome about it, and then here's how to outline and create your each one of these. So it does that for every single one of these, and then it talks to you about how to revise these. And you know, there's also like Q&A session recordings from when I led this course earlier on. So anyway, we'll follow up with more on that and how to get access. All right, much love. Keep writing. You've got this, and make sure that you don't wait too close to the deadline. Sometimes students do that. They like you know, wait until like a day before. And I would just say, as much as you can, get as much writing as you can done early, so that you don't feel, obviously feel super stressed and like ruin your Thanksgiving and like your counselor's Thanksgiving. But it's just, the more that you can get done earlier using these resources, the better. So I know that that's like, I'm ending on like a common value, like something super obvious, forgive me, but yeah, save yourself some trouble. All right, you're welcome. Bye.